Hello and welcome. This is Corey Angela. This is the End of Slavery Summit. I'm here with a very special guest, Ken Bartle. He is a photographer, independent researcher, philosopher, epistemiologist, sorry, very fancy word, anarchist, writer, and teacher of existential natural law. He has several publications and books, as well as many unique solutions, very in detail. Somebody who I greatly admire for that. And his website is naturallawmatters.com. We're going to talk today about how the world's people can navigate to freedom. Essentially, what are the blueprints of freedom? From its very grassroots, may you say, the knowledge to the action. Ken has so many great resources, and he's got books even planned coming on the way. So I can't wait to get into this conversation. Ken, welcome to the End of Slavery Summit. Where do we begin? How can the world navigate to freedom?
Thank you, Corey, and thank you for a wonderful introduction. And welcome also from Australia, which is the down under country in the world. Good to be with you. How do we start? Yes, good question. My introduction to natural law came many years ago, and I started to find out that, I found out through work with my son that the Australian government wasn't a government, it's a corporation. And so the question arose, how do we repurpose Australian government? I began work with my son. He started with a friend, and then they vacated the scene. My son went to America, and I was left twiddling my thumbs, and I thought, well, if they're not going to do it, I will. So I turned to common law as being the first avenue of research. Got me nowhere. I didn't know where to go. So I thought, okay, I'll turn to natural law because natural law apparently underpins common law. So I looked at natural law, and that didn't satisfy me either. Not deterred, I thought, okay, if that doesn't work, I'll turn to human consciousness. How does that work? Maybe that gives me a clue to how natural law works, to common law, etc. So I looked at consciousness and ran across another brick wall, because academia freely admits it does not know what consciousness is. Looked at the dictionary, it says it's awareness, and I thought, none of this satisfies me. So I thought, okay, head down, tail up. Let me get into it. So I did, and I researched it for 4 years. And I found that when I understood what human consciousness is as a process, not as something, but as a process that we go through many times a day, sometimes that process could last for weeks, months, even years. But otherwise, it's a process. So it goes around in a loop, comes back to where you started every time, and it keeps on repeating. And then in that process, I discovered that there were certain governing principles that were guiding that process. And I found that they were mirrored in our biology as well. And then I began to understand that encrypted in our human nature, there were these governing principles or governing laws, which is really what they are. And that really is what natural law is. It's guiding principles which offer us an opportunity to live as Creator intended we should. And from that, we've got a blueprint for society. And I thought, oh, you beauty. Everything just exploded. Oh, I got to the point when before I published my first book in 2017, called Law From Within, I had a period where I went through for weeks on end, where there wasn't a day I didn't sit in front of the computer. I didn't have tears of compassion for the human race streaming down my face while I was typing. It was so beautiful, so thorough. But many times there were things that I'd been brought to believe that I challenged. I didn't know what they meant. And suddenly I found the answers come. Oh, is that what happened when I was 22? Is that what happened when I was 16? Oh. And I started, all the pieces fell into place. And that's how I discovered what natural law is. It, as Mark Baggio says, governs the consequences of our actions. It does not prescribe what we must do. And perhaps the simplest example I can give is in food. Nothing to do with consciousness. Well, it is in a way. We choose what to eat. But if we eat good food, nourishing food, we thrive and prosper. If we eat junk food, toxics, poisons, down the Google we go. That's natural law governing the consequences of our actions. It doesn't say you must eat this and you can't eat that. It says you can eat whatever you like, but I'm going to govern the consequences of your actions. Now, that's really what natural law is. And then I concluded, obviously, that natural law wasn't a theory, as people like Thomas Aquinas talk about it. It's fact. It's a fact given to us by Creator. And what we need to do is come to that understanding of how and why it works. And then we can apply those principles in our life. And when we do, the whole world opens up to us. Wonderful.
Hmm. Yeah,
I
and
trust that gives you.
that's where like morality comes in, right? As to say this is what essentially, like you said, it's not telling us what to do, but based on our outcomes, based on the effects of our behavior, we can understand what's doing harm to us or what is not sustainable, right? What doesn't really benefit the human race.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. If we're smart people, we learn what morality is and we practice it.
Hmm.
Because nature is leaning over our shoulder saying, smarten yourself up
Hmm.
because you're running off the rails.
Yeah.
When I learned what those 20 natural law was, it came to the realisation later when I studied them more intently that 14 of those 20 natural laws are given to us to thrive and prosper. Now that leaves 6 left over. 3 are to keep your train on the rails, and 3 are to put your train back on the rails if it falls off. So the 20 natural laws, you've got the flower diagram is the one I'm looking at. So they're arranged in a circle like a flower. Now, if you look at that, there's 4 groups. So those 4 groups radiate in a clockwise direction in the normal manner. But the other interesting thing about them is that each one has a diametric counterpart. In other words, law number 3 points to number 13. Number 7 points to 17. Number 2 points to number 12. So if you were to collapse the left-hand side of that circle over the right-hand side of the circle, effectively, you've got 10 natural laws. But I prefer to just treat them all individually and separately, because when you read them right round in a circle like that, you get a complete picture of the whole thing. But again, if you read the description for each of them, none of them are telling you what you must do. They're all judging the consequences of your actions.
Right. They're kind of giving us more insight into our nature and the nature of our actions, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And if you look at all those natural laws, a lot of them come down to the word you used before, morality.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
more importantly, it's morality, it's thought, it's application, it's diligence, it's respect. All of those things are built into those natural laws. And if
Right.
you stop and think about what we're always taught about natural law, some people bring it down to the 3 principles: thou shalt not do no harm, cause no loss, mind your own business, effectively. And they
Hmm.
keep it down to a very simple thing. But if you enlarge upon that simplicity, then we should be showing respect for other people because they've got a right to their life as well. So you learn self-respect as well. And then comes in things like diligence. How do you exercise self-respect? By being diligent about what you do. And you start to find then that what came through to me, firstly, when I discovered human consciousness, and it's built on values, that our consciousness is actually a spiritual thing, which is why chemists can't find it in laboratories.
Hmm.
So if you look at it from that point of view, if consciousness is spiritual values, then consciousness effectively is a spiritual medium. And that's why they can't find it in our science labs.
Right. You have a diagram that says the full conscious process, our mental and spiritual operating system. This one also goes into the conscious mind, free choice activated, the subconscious mind, how that contributes to our physical world. You define intelligence, thinking, rationality, reasoning, logic, discernment. That's great. A lot of people talk about that and relate that to the trivium, right?
Well, yes, I think that what that diagram you're looking at there has got 9 higher faculties. Now, science only recognises 6. I found
Hmm.
9, which is 50% more than what they realise. But yes, that particular diagram goes through, and you'll see that 3 of those are above the horizontal line, which is the conscious side of it, or our cognitive mind, and 6 of them are below the horizontal line, which is in the subconscious department,
I see.
including perception. So perception starts the process on the left-hand side. And that really is gathering a whole lot of sensory data through sight, sound, feel, touch, taste, etc. And it
Hmm.
amasses all that data into a concrete singular item. for argument's sake, a teacup, right? And what we see is a teacup, but what the senses are picking up is circles, lines, planes, colours, textures, proportions, relationships, 1,001 bits of sensory data, and it's reducing it down to one simple package that we call a teacup. And what that means is that it's reduced the complexity of all of that information down to something simple which we can handle. And then it passes over into our cognitive mind, and after that opens up discernment, inquiry, discovery, questions, rationality, all those things that we go through in that discovery. We look at it like an infant would. We pick up a teacup and we say, what is it? What's it for? What's it made of? What's its purpose? What can I do with it? Can I buy it, sell it, burn it, scrap it, eat it? I have to learn all these things. So in that process, we go round that discovery curve on the wave diagram. If you have a look at my wave diagrams, the value transfer wave, I call it, you go round that loop and you get back to the horizontal line, where you then make a decision. What am I going to do with this teacup? Am I going to throw it on the floor? Am I going to fill it with tea? Am I going to sell it to my friend? What am I going to do with it? So then in that process of deciding what to do with it, the subconscious mind takes over and follows you through that action. Now, the best way to explain that is if you decide that you want to walk somewhere, for me, perhaps to go to my post box outside the house, I have to walk there. I don't stand up from my chair and say left foot forward, right foot forward, left foot forward, right foot forward, and go through all that mechanism. So my subconscious mind does all that because I learnt to walk when I was a child. So all of that is fully automatic. So that second part of that curve on that value transfer wave is the automatic process. And all of that has happened automatically. Now, when you get to the end, when I've got to the post box, two things. I get two reports. Number one, I can see, touch and feel the post box because I'm right there. And the second thing is I get a message in my emotional report which says, hey, you succeeded in getting to the post office, Ken. That's wonderful. So I get two reports. And that goes back and brings me back to the same level of perception where I began. What do I do with it? Do I open the post box? Do I turn around and say, no, I'm not going to open the post box today? What do I do? So I'm back to that decision making. So that loop through that value transfer wave is now complete, and I'm back to where I was to start with. The difference is now that I've advanced in life. I've got to the post box. I've got more things I can do now where I couldn't do before. I can open the post box. I couldn't from where I was standing before. So I advance through life by going through that process, and that process just goes round and round and round all day, every day. And that's what our consciousness is. So in that process, it's taking account of the values that I put in, thinking at it from more a spiritual term. It wasn't just the mechanics of getting out of my chair, opening the door of my house and walking to the post box and coming back again. That's the physicality of it. But the spiritual value is that I was able to go and check whether there was something of value coming to me in the post. Maybe something came to me in the post and it wasn't of value. Doesn't matter. I was still searching for value. And if you understand then that the conscious process is then searching for value in just about everything you do. If I get up from my chair now and walk to my kitchen to make a cup of tea, I consider that something of value. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. So your mind is constantly searching for value. And when you understand then that the conscious process is working on value, and you understand that it's got certain governing laws which govern the process as to how it does that, then you realise you've got governing laws encrypted in your nature which are there to serve value to your life. Hey presto, that's what natural law is all about. It's all about value. It's not about you shall do this and you can't do that. It's, hey, do you want to live? Do you want to live? Do you want to understand how this works? Learn how your consciousness works. Learn how biology works. Learn how your life is premised on value. And hey presto, the whole world opens up to you. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really what natural law is all about. It's creator's invitation to live. It's not something going, you can't do this and you can't do that. It's created an invitation to live.
Right. And to let others live too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's there for all of us because we're all blessed with the same faculties. We've all got heart, lungs, and all the rest of it. We've all got a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. We all understand what values are. We've all got the means, even in our fingertips, to be able to go and access those material things. So that brings me back to the second part of my description of what human consciousness is. It interfaces physicality on the one hand and spirituality on the other. It's that bridge between the two.
Hmm.
So I come to the conclusion that our conscious mind is working in that spiritual medium, but it's allowing us to interface with the physical world in which we live. So physicality then is a toolbox for allowing us to exercise our values, which effectively means that physicality is a toolbox which allows us to exercise our spirituality. And
Hmm.
again, that's the beautiful thing.
Right. And wrong teaches us of right. And right teaches us of wrong. And, life is
Well,
a lesson.
it is, absolutely. It is.
It's kind of unfortunate because, there's a world where it's like, oh, well, what's the point of value or meaning or purpose? Oh, if I think of something to do, well, somebody's already done it. It's like we live in the age of mass information. It makes things seem less valuable, I think, to people. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, you've opened up a can of worms there because science looks at things like philosophy and certainly spirituality and even free will and says, I can't debate that because I can't do it in a laboratory, right? It's outside my jurisdiction, outside my field of work. So I can't handle it. So it writes it off as though it didn't exist. Now, philosophy looks on the other hand, and on the other hand, it says, how can I adopt theory to practice? And so it's trying to find its way into the laboratory. Science is trying to find its way out of the laboratory, if you understand where I'm going.
Hmm.
And part of the problem is that we don't see that spiritual nature in ourselves, and going back to the word value that I used, as being something which is tangible and therefore we can't get it. We can't buy it at a supermarket. We can't buy it at a service station where we buy gas for our car. You can't buy those values, they're spiritual. But here's the interesting thing. If science is going to write off our human consciousness as being outside of its field and can't find it in a laboratory, so we won't discuss that, that's about as silly as saying, I can't discuss biology because people have got the free will to eat what they want. How can that be a science if people can choose what they eat? And yet scientists study biology in laboratories everywhere around the world every day of the week. So in that sense, they're dealing with the fact that, yes, we can choose what to eat. If we extend that principle, we can choose what to think. So why shouldn't consciousness be as much a science as biology is? We can choose what to eat. That's biology. We can choose what to think. That's, oh, no, we can't go there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we've written that off. And to that degree, the world has become ignorant of what its own conscious abilities are. Most of us know that we need nutritional food. So we say, oh, look, I'll go on a vegetable diet and I'll give away all of this packaged food, right? And that'll be the means of how I get back to nature. Nobody teaches how to do that in the mental realm. And so we're stumped. And because nobody goes down that path and nobody bothers to understand how that conscious process works, we don't become aware of the natural laws which govern that process. And so we are ignorant then of the natural laws which are encrypted in our nature.
Hmm.
And then we say, oh, well, what are we going to do? Oh, we'll write some laws. So we write statutes and we pass them through legislation in Parliament or Congress or wherever, right? And we say, this is what you've got to do from here on. And we've completely lost the plot. If we went back to square one and said, have we got natural laws encrypted in our nature? Yes. Well, why don't we use those in society? How will we use those? If you think about your human body as a society of 50 trillion individuals, I'm going right down to the cellular level now, but cells, organs, bones, tissues, structures, cells and things within our body, our blood. If you consider that a society of 50 trillion individuals governed by 20 natural laws, have we got a formula for 7 billion people? More than adequate. So what we've got to do is to say, how do those laws work in our human nature? And that's those 20 natural laws that I described. As I said before, none of them say you've got to do this and you can't do that. They're all saying, here it is. Here's the formula. Take it out there and translate it. Now, let me explain further. Our heart and lungs, they're meshed together. They pulse and they keep us alive from the moment we're born and before till the moment we meet Peter at the pearly gates. Now, if you think about it, one of them is pneumatic, the other one's hydraulic. One's pumping blood, the other one's pumping air. The one that's pumping blood is keeping the ability to pump oxygen operating. The one that's pumping oxygen is keeping the ability to pump blood operating. We've got a cooperative society with 2 completely different individuals working in 2 different industries in support of one another. What do we do in society? Oh no, we have to have competition. You've got to compete with him. Hello? Our nature is telling us cooperation is the name of the game, because both of those faculties work in support of our life.
Right.
Now, when you take that principle and you translate it into our conscious and subconscious mind, you see they're doing the same thing. They're enmeshed in that communication, which is what that subject was that you had struggling with the words. Epistemology is the proper pronunciation for that. Epistemology is the communication of the conscious and subconscious minds coming together. And when you understand how they communicate, in that our cognitive mind works with concept, principles, and words. Our subconscious mind works with images. Hence, we have an imagination. Now, what's imagination for? A lot of people say, oh, that's great for kids, they can play cowboys and Indians in the backyard when they're kids, and I imagine I'm the Indian, you're the cowboy, and it's doctors and nurses, we invent all these things, and our imagination runs wild, and as kids we enjoy it, have a lot of fun. But think further. That same ability that we use to imagine that we're a doctor or a nurse or a cowboy or Indian when we were young is the means by which we can imagine things like respect and truth and honesty, those spiritual values, as being cognitive things. And we can use that imagination to transplant them into the subconscious mind because its vocabulary is images. And that's the real purpose of imagination. That's why we're blessed with it. So we can upload those values. If we upload those values to our conscious mind, subconscious mind, we put them on autopilot. So if I can imagine, for example, I've got a meeting coming up next week. I'm going to go to that meeting and I want to really find out what it's all about. So I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to be very respectful of those people that are going to be speaking at that meeting. I'm going to be diligent. I'm going to pay close attention to what they say. I'm going to sort out the honesty and truth from what that is. Wait a minute, it's getting more complicated. Let's make it all simple. Next week when I go to that meeting, I want to exercise respect. So I'm going to imagine this and I'm going to program this into my subconscious mind. So when I go to that meeting, I'm very respectful. So I imagine going to that meeting. I imagine preparing for the meeting, getting dressed, driving the car, going to the meeting, parking it, going up in the elevator and going to that meeting. I imagine meeting and greeting all the people. Then I imagine, as the second part of my example that I'm giving, sitting in that meeting and paying respect to those people that are speaking, waiting until my turn to ask a question, being respectful of other people in the meeting, allowing them to voice their views, not shouting them down saying, I disagree. And the third part of my imagination exercise is to imagine all the benefits that result. What might it be? Maybe I even get a pay rise at that meeting. Who knows? What might happen? I can see all sorts of benefits. It'll benefit my family. I've learned how to become respectful. I've learned how to respect other people. I give my wife a bit more credit now because instead of arguing with her as I've done in the past, I listen to her point of view. I'm being respectful of her viewpoint. So I program that into my subconscious mind. But respect now also applies when I go to meet my dentist the week after, or something else. I've programmed it into my subconscious mind. My subconscious mind says, your conscious mind and what I do now are on the same page. Let's get this synergy happening of two people being joined together as one. And hey, presto, I've now prioritised respect into my subconscious mind. Now, if I go through and make a list of 15 values and use that same 3-minute exercise, which I describe in my book, to upload those values to my subconscious mind, in 45 minutes, I have turned my life completely about face. Because I've made it work in the spiritual plane now instead of the material plane. I still deal with physicality, like I said. I still go to meetings, drive my car, do all those things. But now I'm working in a spiritual plane and the world just blossoms. It's wonderful. Benefits start pouring in because I'm focused on that. Now, if you think about a surgeon, you're working with a scalpel, very carefully, his sensors are monitoring every split-second move that he makes with absolute precision, because one slip and that patient's dead. He's programmed diligence into his subconscious mind, and that's the way he works. That's the way the subconscious mind works. If I want to do anything, whatever it might be, pick up an object, I have to exercise a certain diligence. Otherwise, I fumble and knock it on the floor instead of picking it up off my desk. So the subconscious mind is working with diligence all the time. If I can program diligence into my subconscious mind as being my willful choice of this is the way I want to live, then subconscious mind says, ha ha, you beauty, we're on the same page, mate. We can work together on this. So I've now got myself into the position where my subconscious mind is my buddy. I talk to it like my buddy. I say, hey, bro, let's go. Let's drive from here to wherever. Pay attention. I'm on your side. Let's do it together, buddy. And I go through my life in this, and it's unbelievable. The things that fall my way are unknown. I had an example 6 years ago. I had a colon cancer. I was in hospital for 5 weeks. Nearly lost my life twice in that week.
Wow.
Sorry, in 1 week, but I was there for 5 weeks.
Man.
And I came out of that and I didn't see much of the future in front of me. But I still had that same determination. It was just about the time I was to publish the book, just before publishing the book. And here I am, 7 years down the track.
Wow.
Alive and functioning. Okay, I've got a hernia because of the operation, and it's held in with a corset, so I'm not the brightest young chick on the face of the planet, but never mind. What happened was my car was getting a bit beyond repair. I didn't have the money to have a replacement car, but I focused with my conscious mind. I knew that I had been spared my life for the reason of getting this information out to the world. I knew it was important for me to go ahead and publish that book. And I knew that I was on a mission and that my mission was to get that out there. Guess what happened? Out of the blue, I finished up with a new car, all paid for. I won't go into all the details, but I had no idea that was going to happen. And that was part of my ability to be able to focus my subconscious mind on the fact I had a mission, I was going to do it, I needed to do it, and out of the blue, that happened. It works.
Wow.
When you can focus your mind on it really is nothing more than really having a passion for life. That's what it is. I want to live. I want to enjoy life. I want to be happy.
Right.
I want to be a loving person. I want to be compassionate. And I started to realise those are destination values. That's the kind of person I want to be. How do I get there? Then I realised that there was between material values and material values on one hand, destination values on the other, there was those values in the middle, like diligence, honesty, respect, truthfulness, and so on, that get you there. And it's by practicing those, putting them on autopilots in the subconscious mind, that progresses you to being a loving, compassionate, or even wealthy person. That's how the whole thing works. And when I realised how it works, and it all came down to those 20 natural laws, And I found that those 20 natural laws were effectively reinforcing those values. 20 natural laws, I narrowed it down to about 15 spiritual values. That's all. Because when I went beyond that, I found I was just making subsets. Is truth a subset of honesty, or is honesty a subset of truth? It doesn't matter. You can phrase them however you want. But at the end of the day, truth and honesty are prime if you really want to make progress in this world. Otherwise, you're just kidding yourself. You're not making any progress. So I thought, oh, how wonderful this is, and how simple it is. And science has no clue about this, and neither do philosophers.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I can bring that down and understand how that works and that interaction between those two minds and that communication of epistemology and understand, it becomes an objective science. Life is the goal. Everything to that end is objective. How can I live? How can I have passion for life? How can I blossom in this world? How can I be fruitful? How can I help my fellow man? All of those things are having a passion for life, and they're all built into that conscious process. All we need to do is understand how those laws work. And we've got existential natural law, meaning factual natural law, not some theory that somebody invented.
Hmm. So having like a goal or direction such as freedom in the case of the 1800s or today, where a lot of people say this is the goal I want to achieve, right? So this is they're determined, they create that in their vision, they program themselves to attain that freedom, like the slave on the plantation who sings about the songs of being free and shares it with the fellow man on the plantation until they gather the strength and they're determined to free themselves, and they instill that value within themselves to say that they themselves are valuable, that they have a
Yes.
life worth living, like you're
Yeah.
saying, to be happy, to live life. And I see
Yes.
that exactly in that scenario in the past. And you said, like, you can look at the past, you looked at your past when you were younger, or we can look at history where the slaves are on plantations. And I'm saying, slavery still exists. This is powerful to me because what if we can instill a new program into our minds to say, we are free, because we see that we're getting more enslaved again.
Yes, absolutely. We can instill that in our mind. I got to the realization that all of what you just described is possible to us. You know what happened? All fear vanished. All of it gone. People talk to me about, oh, you're going to be infiltrated by some evil entity. No, I'm not. I've taken charge of that. I've impressed that on my subconscious mind. Evil entities, no permission. That's my choice. And I put that into my subconscious mind as my instruction. I don't have any fear of that anymore. I don't have any fear of a policeman talking to me in the street and saying, you've been advocating about the government and you should be getting rid of it. What if I have? Are you here also to keep the community safe? If so, we're on the same page. Where's your problem? I don't have any fear of that anymore. It's all gone. All I've got is this wonderful vision of a future for humanity, which, who knows, it might take 10, 20, 30, 50 years yet to happen. But if we don't start now, we'll never start. So let's bring it on. Let's start working. And if I do that myself, and if I'm able to write books and get that information out to the populace, and they can say, Ken's onto something. I took one of his little examples. Guess what? I was able to turn my alarm clock off and I can still wake up at the exact time of the day that I want to wake up. No alarm clock. Because my subconscious mind's in charge. It knows what the time is. It wakes me when I'm ready to be woken. I just tell it the night before, wake me at 10:24, wake me at 3 o'clock in the morning, wake me at 4 o'clock. Want to catch a plane and I need to be on the plane early? I can wake up. Don't even need an alarm clock because my subconscious mind's in charge. If I can do that for simple exercise as to wake up when I want, then I can do that for the most complex exercise on the face of the planet just by informing my subconscious mind, I want to go through this, be a part of it, come out shining on the other side. Subconscious mind says, got you, buddy, no problem. Does it?
Hmm.
or
So
fully automate.
you said you have like a 3-minute exercise in your book, or
Yes,
something like that. Yeah,
yes,
to apply it.
yes. I call it the 3 by 1 minute exercise. In very brief terms, the first minute you visualize preparing to enact a particular value, right? The second minute you visualize actually doing it. So the first minute is preparation, right? Like I want to enjoy a walk every morning for the benefit of my health. I've impressed on that my subconscious mind it's for my benefit, it's all for health. I want to do it, not just tomorrow, but in the morning, and I want to enjoy it. So I want to enjoy 20-minute walk every morning for my health. So I go through this imagine. I imagine preparing for it, waking up in the morning, opening the window, the birds are singing outside, dressing to go for my walk. Then I imagine doing it, imagine going for the walk, kicking my shoes off, walking through a mud puddle, enjoying life.
Mhm.
Right? And the third minute, I envisage all the benefits that come. Hey, my health has improved. I've just given up junk food. Right? Now I go to the health food store and buy nutritious food. That's 3 minute exercise. Each one taking no longer than a minute, preferably even less. Having told my mind that I have got a passion for life, because all of those exercises that I do are all about self-improving your life. If you want to go the other way, you don't need to exercise. You just say, who cares? And you waft off. And that's your choice. When you say, I don't care, that's effectively telling your subconscious mind, just use whatever values you can find, which it will do, but it will go back to what you heard on the television yesterday, or what you heard from a preacher 10 years ago, or what you learned when you were a kid, or what your grandmother taught you, whatever it was. It'll find something in your life that's relevant to your present moment, and it'll say, you chose that in the past, it must be applicable now. It was your choice. But if I do the opposite and I upload those values, spiritual values, to my subconscious mind and prioritize them, all those ones that came from the past get overridden. So they all vanish. And now I'm taking charge of my life, and I'm doing it consciously through my free will. And then I'm pressing it on the subconscious mind, which then makes them automated. So it governs the consequence of my action now, because the feelings that I get now are related to my values. Now, if you think about it, it works, even for a burglar, right? A burglar will get in his car and drive around the neighbourhood and collect television sets out of everybody's lounge rooms while they're fast asleep. And he gets home and he gets a joyous experience. I got 10 television sets last night. Isn't that awesome? Well, he's overjoyed because he did what the values that he said to his subconscious mind. My value is to see from other people, and I sell it and I make money. That's my value. So his subconscious mind learns that robbery is the highest value that he's got in his vocabulary. So every time he does a successful theft, he gets a joyous emotion, which is the subconscious mind rewarding him for the value that he put on it. Now, if that works for a burglar and we turn it around and we say, I'm not going to be a burglar, I'm too passionate about my life. What's my goal? What do I want to achieve? Is it my children's education? Is it a happy relationship with my partner? What is it? Where am I going? What do I want to achieve? What's my value in life? Don't talk to me about trading, pinching somebody else's value. That's something they worked for. Talk to me about creating my own value. I'm a creator. Ha ha, I'm a creator. Yes, I am. And I've got all the ability to do it. And all I've got to do is program my mind. I want to create. I want to live. I want to be the wonderful person that God enabled me to be. Program your mind, put your values in place, exercise them, and you can do it.
Well, yeah.
That's natural law.
Yes, that's putting it into practice, which I love. You talking about this because you're making it very actionable for people. Would you say like individual change and individual, versus collective change is the most important? Because only I can truly control myself. Only I can truly free myself. Only I can control my own mind, can breathe for me, and I'm in ownership of myself. So instead of projecting everything on a collective level or saying, well, change needs to happen collectively, we need to pass a new law in, we need to get these people in this town or whatever, is it more important to look at the individual? And is there collective action that we can take, however?
I'm smiling because I run across this problem all the time when I'm talking to people. Let me ask you a question.
Hmm.
Is there such a thing as a collective stomach? Is there a collective pancreas? Is there a collective kidney? Is there a collective consciousness?
Hmm.
No, it's all individual. This happens on the individual level. But if you think about what I've been saying, Corey, if we practice those things on an individual level, who benefits? Just me? Or does society benefit? If I switch from becoming a burglar that drives around the neighbourhood picking up television sets to becoming a creative being, who benefits? Society wasn't benefiting from what I was doing in the past. It was depreciating because all those people lost their television sets. If now I'm becoming a creator, I'm creating something that wasn't there before. Now, that creation doesn't have to be material. It might be spiritual. If I can create an atmosphere around me where people gravitate to me because I say, I like the energy that Ken's exhibiting, right? It's wonderful. He inspires me. If I'm inspiring other people to become the best they can be, then I'm still working effectively in that society, but I'm doing it as an individual. And I'm showing how they can benefit themselves as an individual. So yes, most emphatically it's individual. Just the same way as our stomach is individual, and our conscious mind is individual, and our subconscious mind is individual, it's all individual.
Hmm.
And that's where I'm going with that process of being able to program your subconscious mind. It's all on the individual level. Because the beauty of it is I choose what to program into my subconscious mind. If I program into my subconscious mind that I want to be the world's best tennis player, then I will start heading in that direction because I've impressed that that is my goal. If I go to a tennis match and I stumble and fall around the court and don't succeed and I don't win the game and I go off because I've injured my kneecap because I fell on the court, I'm getting a report from my subconscious mind that's saying, you set out to be a world best tennis player and you're not succeeding at the moment. And that's the emotional report that I get, which effectively is saying, you need to sharpen yourself up. There's something that you're missing there. You're not doing enough. Maybe you need to do some more physical exercise. Maybe you need to get out on your bike and practice using your legs a little bit in a different way. Maybe there's something that you need to do that's different, which will help you become a better tennis player. That's what your emotional report is telling you. Your value is not being met. So suppose I get that message and I say, okay, I'll spend a little extra time at the gym. I'll do this, I'll do that. And next week I go to the tennis match. Suddenly it's a different ballgame. I win a few sets. I get excited. This is working. And I throw more diligence and more passion into it and I end up winning the game. I get an emotional report that says, now you're on the right wavelength, Ken. Now you're making progress. Now you're going somewhere. And so my emotional report is coming back to me. All of that was individual.
Right.
The tennis community didn't create it. The tennis club didn't create it, right? The people who make tennis balls and rackets didn't create it. I did it. It's individual.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, I was also just curious, like, is there a need for movement or something to make more of an impact, or is it rather just individuals who are doing this all together? They're all just expressing their passions together. They're all doing it at an individual level, but because all of them are doing it, it sort of makes it collective.
Yes, yeah, that's very true. If you think about a lot of people who go to a rock concert, right, or even people who go to the beach, they go there because other people are doing the same thing and getting enjoyment from it,
Hmm.
right? So they say, oh, if that's what people are doing to get enjoyment, then maybe I'll do that and I'll get some enjoyment. So yes, there's that spillover effect,
Right.
which goes from the individual to the collective, because if we can each benefit ourselves, we will attract to us the people who are benefiting themselves. And then we start to become, initially, maybe a small group, maybe only your family, right? Maybe it expands a little bit more. Maybe it extends into community. maybe extend statewide. And suddenly the whole world is starting to change. Look what's available to me. Look what I can do. Look what we all can do.
Hmm.
Because the more I do it, the more I inspire other people to do it. And it
Hmm.
catches on, catches on. People say, how did you do that? Wow.
Yeah.
And it all blossoms from there.
Yeah. And you know, to go back to that like analogy I had with the slaves on the plantation, I mean, it's just powerful because you said, you know, the change could happen in 40, 50 years from now. Well, think about chattel slavery in the 1800s. That happened over 5,000 years of experience to get to the point to where humans said, no, we don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, what a development in consciousness, or a use of consciousness, may you say.
Yes.
Uh, so I think it's powerful because some people might say, well, if natural law was always existent, then how come, you know, that people were enslaved then? Well, maybe it's because they didn't know what it was. They weren't using it as you're talking about.
Well, the problem has been that for a long time, people have realised that you can't rule people and have natural law. The two are incompatible.
Hmm.
So if you want to rule people, you've got to rule out natural law, which means you've got to keep people ignorant of their own consciousness, or they might discover it. We've got to keep people in ignorance. Thomas Jefferson said, a nation that expects to be ignorant and free expects what never was and never will be. Ignorant and free don't work. Knowledge and freedom work. So if we paraphrase Jefferson's words, if a nation expects to be knowledgeable and free, it expects what should be and protects it.
Hmm. That's true. Good way of twisting. I like that. Um,
But that's ignorance shifting to knowledge, and that's what I found when I discovered how the conscious process works. We can shift out of that state of ignorance into a state of knowledge. The moment we get into that state of knowledge and start to understand how that value system works is the moment we start to blossom. Then we start to be an inspiration to other people, and so it just magnifies and magnifies and magnifies. And that's unstoppable once that happens.
hmm.
That's the future, hopefully.
Yeah,
That's what I'm working.
when you say this individual must like sort of evaluate themselves and make these goals, I mean, this is authenticity as well, right? And you're saying like this sort of radiates because individuals will attract certain individuals, kind of like love, right? Or
All of
true
it.
love, right? So, and love brings knowledge, and knowledge brings sovereignty, and you can make these connections, and that's why I love your graphs that go into detail and make all these connections for people because it's really step by step. I would encourage people to check out your book, Law from Within. It goes over the 20 laws, but kind of going alongside this idea of questioning authority and our freedoms. You yourself have done that, right? Through applying the natural laws. You realize other people are not applying natural law, or that the elites, like you said, the people in control don't want people knowing natural laws. So how does that work? Like, how long were you a statist, somebody who believes in government and man's law? And when was it that you kind of started to get the brink of understanding natural law and becoming an anarchist, as you call yourself?
Well, it started when I was 22 and I came out of New Zealand and came to Australia. And I worked in a place and a fellow was reading a book. Cutting a long story short, he gave me the book. I read it. It changed my life. It was Atlas Shrugged, written by Ayn Rand.
Mm.
And within that, she introduced, you're probably familiar with the book, and many of your listeners probably are as well. But it changed my life because it introduced objectivist philosophy, which meant that if philosophy wasn't objective towards life, then what use is it? And so for 45 years in my working practice, until my retirement at least, I used that process or that philosophy of objectivism. What am I trying to achieve? Right? I was designing houses. I came to the conclusion that a new house is not, or the merits of a new house is not champagne and roses on the day you move in. It's heartfelt gratitude on the day you move out. It served me. And that's what philosophy is supposed to do. It's supposed to serve our needs. And that's what human consciousness is all about. It's there to serve our needs. That's what the 20 natural laws are all about, there to serve our needs. But we've been hidden from it because philosophy have long said, you can't have that, otherwise I can't rule. As Frank Van Dunn, another philosopher of law, points out, there's much more money to be made from an invented system of law than from natural law. And if money is your goal, and for a lot of people it is, it's their religion almost, right? Got to make money, got to make money, got to make money. Then law will appeal to them because that spins the money. Natural law doesn't, because it's all free. Thank you.
Yeah. Lysander Spooner said that too. He said positive legislation gives slavery aid. Natural law can't give it any aid.
Exactly. Yeah. Spooner was spot on with a lot of things, yes.
Yeah. So you call yourself an anarchist, and that means for people who don't know, anarchon means no rulers, just to emphasize, because a lot of people don't know that. I call myself an abolitionist, sort of the same deal, no masters, no slaves. You want to
Well,
explain a bit about that?
here's the interesting point. It's not so much a question of non-government, no government.
Hmm.
It's self-governance. But I call it governance, not government, right? Government theoretically means mind control. Governance is, take the ANCE, that's a dance by governing yourself. It's self-mastery. That's what it is, right? And that's what leads to the word sovereignty. But let's not go, save that for another day.
No, you're right. Like in looking at
But
internal government is like sovereignty and um
it's self-sovereignty.
yeah.
It's a person who is not putting himself above other people. They're not the judge. He's being the best that he can be to himself, the way Creator intended that we should be. And if others benefit from that, that's wonderful. If they don't, that's equally wonderful, because they're entitled to do whatever they wish or attune to whatever they wish.
Hmm.
But for me, I decide that I want to be the best I can be. So I'll employ all of those things which Creator gave me that enable me to rise to that level. And then I benefit, and my actions then will spill over into the community.
Hmm. Yeah, when we talk about this, I also kind of get flashbacks to a presentation I did on J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And I know he might be based in where you're located from, New Zealand, and a lot of things
Yeah.
was filmed there. It's really cool that you get to be there. But I did a whole presentation on his works. He called himself an anarchist. A lot of people don't know that. But he shared that theme of looking at free will in the spiritual way, and he made that a very common theme within his books and within his movies. And he also said exactly what you said, sort of separating the idea of government from governance, or what he calls the act of governing. Because the
Yeah.
act of governing is different from like this condition of men, which he says should be used with a lowercase g, because he just thought it was so low of other men to control other men and do whatever they want with their fellow men. Yeah.
If you or your listeners are familiar with the work of Larkin Rose,
Hmm.
you'll know that he talks about it as authority. And that's really what it comes down to. Government is authority. I've got the authority over you. And natural law says no authority. Let me give you an example of how that works in the conscious field.
Sure.
The cognitive mind works with free will, right? Now, as I've said to you, it can program the subconscious mind, which means it can influence the content that the subconscious mind draws on, but it cannot change its process. It cannot change how that subconscious mind works, but it can influence what it deals with. If I choose to walk, my subconscious mind does the walking activities. If I choose to dance, my subconscious mind does the dancing activities. If I choose to climb, my subconscious mind does the climbing activities. Right? So I'm changing what the subconscious mind is working with, but I'm not changing the process of the way it governs my body and how it works and how it controls my muscles and adrenaline release and heart rate and all those other things that it governs. So I don't change the process. So my cognitive mind then can influence the subconscious mind but can't change its process. The cognitive mind can influence my cognitive mind but can't change its process, because otherwise I would have no free will. So I've got two separate minds, each one protecting the other. So self-protection is built in, the same way as it's built into our biology and our immune system. But Creator had a bit of a problem when he put us together. He said, I've built a biological immune system which works. Every time a toxin turns up, gets rid of it, right? Autoimmune fixes the body. How do I do that in the mental realm? Problem here. Can't do that because if the subconscious mind did an automatic correction, it would overrule free will. Can't have that. So what can I do? I'll invent emotions. And I'll give an emotional report to the cognitive mind so that the cognitive mind is alerted to the fact that there's a problem that needs to be dealt with. Needs to go back and have a look at that ideology or that philosophy and say, is that right or wrong? Is it true or false? So Creator's given us on one hand an autoimmune system which works automatically, but the subconscious mind then brings up what I call an automated mentoring system. So we're alerted to the problem we make. Going back to the example for the burglar. If the burglar gets arrested by the coppers when he's making another raid on the television house, right, he's faced the consequences of his actions. But he gets an emotional report which says, oh, damn, I did the wrong thing. I forgot to do this, and that's attracted the attention of the police. So he's getting an emotional report which went against the value of the fact that he wanted to steal somebody else's property. So in the same way, if I've got a value which says I want to be respectful towards other people, and somebody comes up and smacks me in the face because I'm disrespectful, I earned it because I was the one who stepped off the line. So what we've got now is, in the fact that the cognitive mind can't overrule the conscious mind, subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind can't overrule the other, guess what we've got? It's what I call the natural law of no trespass. Neither one can tell the other one what they can do with their life, and yet they can influence them. Now, if you translate that into society, I can influence you or your listeners into terms of what I'm saying, but what they do with that information is entirely up to them.
Right.
Because I can't change the process by which they operate. I can influence what they're thinking, what they're listening to, but I can't change the process by which they operate. I can't interfere with their free will. So that natural law of no trespass then becomes effectively what people are always saying about natural law from the theory point of view: do no harm, cause no loss. That law is encrypted in our nature between our subconscious and conscious minds, the same way as it's encrypted there between our heart and lungs that are pulsing with one another and producing our lifeblood.
Wow. Yeah, so amazing. Thank you for sharing all this, and really getting deep into the consciousness aspect of this, because not a lot of people will get into that. Yet how important it is, especially beyond all these laws and what they actually operate by. I appreciate you for sharing that perspective. I have one final question, if that's okay,
Sure.
because I was curious. You mentioned common law, and that kind of helped bring you to where you are. A lot of people might not know what that is and what that is compared to natural law. Can you kind of guide us through? And could we still use common law in a free world?
Well, yes, okay. You've opened up another tin of red herrings.
On purpose.
This common law in America is different from common law as happens in Australia and the UK and Canada and New Zealand, right? It's a completely different thing. Common law in America is more related back to your Declaration of Independence, where you declared your separation from Great Britain and you said, let's build a free society. And capitalism is one word that comes to the fore, and that's the way America went ahead. And for the best part of 100 years, they prospered because of that, going back to what might be called common law. Now, common law in that sense effectively meant going back to the sort of biblical principles and the Ten Commandments: thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's wife, and all those sorts of things, which are effectively giving you a moral appraisal of how you should run your life. And that became effectively what American common law is based on. Now, UK common law was a different thing. That common then applied to what they call case law. So a judge would deal with a case, let's suppose a divorce, right? And he says, oh, your circumstances that in the evidence that have been produced were like a case that was held in 1937 and another case in 1946 and one in 1924 and one in 1983. So on the basis of that, I'm going to judge this. This is my judgment according to those different cases, which are all common to you. So the word common now is common law, which meant it was common to all those cases. So that's why common law in the UK is called case law.
Okay.
And that's another name for it. And that's quite different from the American one. So
Hmm.
to return back to common law, then the question comes up, which common law are you returning back to? The American version or the UK one? Now, I would say forget both of them. If you understand how natural law works, it's common to all people anyway, because we've all got heart and lungs, we've all got a conscious and subconscious mind. We've also got pancreas and liver. We're all blessed with the same things. But though we're all equal, we're all unique in expression, right? I've got blue eyes, somebody else got brown eyes, I've got white hair, somebody else got black hair. We're all different in expression, different in the way we do things, different in the way we even use our hands. So we're all unique in that respect. But on the other sense, we're all equal. So in terms of natural law then, natural law is the thing which governs those internal processes. And as I said, we can't change that process. That's been set by a creator. So that's in common to all of us. So in that sense, natural law is natural common law, in the sense that it is of our nature and it is common to all of us. So it's both natural and it's both common. I
Hmm.
prefer to stick with the natural because I want to make the emphasis that it belongs in our nature. As Frank Van Dunn, the philosopher of law, pointed out, you were born of your nature a free being. And
Hmm.
that's what that freedom is all about, and free will. So if you were born of that of nature, then anybody who comes along and says, sorry, I'm going to write a rule which says you can't do this, I'm going to overrule your free will, they are automatically in violation of that natural law of no trespass. They've just trespassed your free will right to choose.
Right.
They haven't trespassed your free will right to escape the consequences. Right? If I go out and do a stupid thing and drive in my car and have an accident, then I caused it. Right? Now, okay, somebody else might bang into me, in which case he then was the cause of it, or she, not me. But nonetheless, the one who causes the action is the consequence of that action. So I'm not making that quite clear. Natural law governs the consequences of our action, right? Had I been perhaps a little more diligent and been able to avoid that accident, then it would never have happened. So that brings back the subject of values again. So to repeat, what I'm saying is that if we can program those values into our life and put them on autopilot, that reduces our workload down to near zero because they're on autopilot. But nonetheless, those principles are now guiding what we do and how we live our life.
Right.
So that's, I think, where we can go and what we can do to prosper and progress.
Yeah. Some people refer to natural law as God's law or divine law. I don't know if you would differentiate these or eternal law, but if we're talking about the same stuff ultimately, then I think
Yeah,
it's
it is.
different, right? It doesn't matter what we call it. Um, would you say like Anna von Reitz and sort of like the American State Nationals, which I've seen some of your works talks about, is among the lines of American common law?
Yes, yes. Anna von Reitz is I think, the American champion of American common law. And yes, her work in reconvening those people and becoming American state nationals is taking them out of the public and bringing them back into the private, which is where they should never have departed. Here in Australia, we can't do that because we don't have a history like you have in America of being able to revert back to those principles of independence that come from the 1776 Declaration of Independence.
Hmm.
Here in Australia, we can only revert back to our 1901 Constitution, which was British law, which is what America escaped from in 1776. So we're only going back to what Britain was doing to America back then.
Wow.
So we can't reconvene to that. But I take the point of view that if we were born free of nature, as Frank Van Daan says, and as I say, and all of that natural law was born into our system when we were born free. So if we want to reconvene or reconvey ourselves out of some globalist or deep state structure back to something more sensible, then to reconvey back to what we were born as seems to be the logical thing, irrespective of what name you might give it, whether it's natural or divine law, God's law, whatever.
Right.
The name doesn't matter. What matters is that you were born with that free nature, and we can reconvey back to that. Then we escape from underneath those clutches. Because here's the interesting point, and Frank Van Dunn brought it home to me, and it hit me like a rock when it first struck. He said those people that make all these artificial laws are the ones that have actually turned their back on their own nature, because they have decided to trespass your nature. They chose that voluntarily. They have walked out on life. You didn't. Now, when I realised that, I saw freedom in big letters, because they're the ones who walked out on life. I'm not extracting myself out of their system. They extracted themselves out of the system of life. And when they departed natural law and stepped outside the bounds of natural law, they self-declared themselves, I am an outlaw.
Hmm.
Now, you realise that they've self-declared themselves to be an outlaw. Why am I going knocking on the door and saying, excuse me, I want to be released from all this stuff? When it was invalid from the word go, it was invalid because they trespassed their own life in order to make those laws that they made.
Right. And even all those
Which
papers.
means that those laws were invalid from the word go. So I don't have to extract myself from them. I am already a free person. God gave me that.
Right. You
End
don't
of
need to
story.
sign stuff. You don't need to. Right.
But I do have to declare my independence from all that nonsense goes on by saying I am a free person. And that comes back to that identity system.
Yes.
I identify myself as a living being. The moment I identify myself as a living being, I'm different from all of these straw man fictional creations that they make with birth certificates and the whole routine of uppercase writing and all that stuff that Anawan Rights goes into, which is all real, of course, that's what they do. But it means that I'm born free, I am free. End of story.
Right. which which only you can, truly take charge on. It's your nature.
Well, that's the beauty I found in understanding the conscious process, because the more I understood about how the conscious process works, the more I realised how free is absolutely protected within that conscious process. And yet I can still use the value of autopilot. So I got two values coming out of it. Number one is that I don't have to be ruled by anybody. Number two is that I'm free. In being free to roam the cosmos, I can put my values on autopilot and have them done automatically. What a brilliant thing from our Creator. It's unbelievable when you think about it in those terms. I'm free to roam the cosmos, and I can take the values that I want to achieve in life, put them on autopilot, and then work towards that end. It's got my beautiful subconscious buddy's doing the job for me. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Subconscious mind can do 38 trillion operations per second, which is about 0.002 of what the world's best computer can do.
Sounds to me like the answers are already here with us. We just need to learn how to use them.
We've never learned them. And the reason we've never learned them is because somebody decided, I am going to rule over the world. Whether it
Hmm.
was an emperor or a monarch or a dynasty or a government or
Yeah.
globalist, call them whatever you like, they decided they wanted to rule the world.
They wanted
And
to be
God,
the answer. They wanted to be nature.
and God has said, you're the boss. You,
Right.
and within us are all those principles that allow it to happen, all the natural laws that show it how it should happen, all those 20 natural laws, if you follow those through and see how they work. There's one of the diagrams that I showed you has got
Yes.
a definition of them all the way around the circle. When you
Awesome.
understand that, you realise none of them are saying, you will do this. They're all saying, this is what is open to you. If you want to use these things, they're all here on tap.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Ken. I appreciate it. Those are what I would call natural powers as well. I mean, it is. It's
Yes,
this is what makes us powerful. And it's
that's
like
right.
the alchemist who knows what ingredients to bring together and what to make, a transmutation and all the stuff the ancients were talking
Absolutely.
about with bringing ideas and using it, mastering the elements, a shaman, who knows how to work the universe and therefore spin anything in any direction. I mean, It's sorcery. It's magic. Some may call it. It's this is great knowledge, and I appreciate you for sharing this. And I know we can probably go on forever talking about these topics. And we'll definitely keep in touch. I encourage people to check out your works. Is there anything else you want to mention before we end?
No, I can only say to people, please take some time out of your life, read my book, and you will get a far better understanding than what I've been able to convey here today. And when you see and you understand how those simple principles work and how you've been denied those because you were never taught them as a child, nobody teaches them today. No church teaches them, no parliament teaches them, no Congress teaches them, nobody teaches them. Academia doesn't even know they exist. Once you start to realise how you've been kept in the dark, and you see how doing simple little things like learning how to wake yourself at 3 o'clock in the morning, you do that once or twice and you know it works, and then you start to gravitate and you start to do other things, and then you start to program your subconscious mind, and you go further and further through that exercise. And then you learn to take charge of your life. Suddenly the whole world's just completely different from what it was before. And you did it to yourself and for yourself. And everybody else gets a spin-off benefit. Can't ask for anything better than that. It's just glorious.
Yeah. You're a great inspiration to me, so I encourage you keep up the work, and thank you so much for everything you've already shared. Like I said, I have your book, Law from Within. I lended it to a friend as well, and he loves it. And so thank you also for all the diagrams and everything. I encourage people to check out your sheet that you provide for everybody to download. You have a lot of links on consciousness, natural law links, also information about your future books. I encourage everybody checks that out. Your name is Ken Bartle. His website is naturallawmatters.com. So that's naturallawmatters.com. And like I said, he's already got books out. I encourage you guys check it out, and I would recommend it. It's very in detail. Probably the best perspective I've seen detailing natural law. So thank you everybody for watching. If you want to see a lot more speakers like this great man, Ken Bartle, you can go to nita.one/summit, nita.one/summit. This is the end of Slavery Summit. Thank you very much for watching.